The Peter Schiff Show.
I want to play a little of the sound from Timothy Geithner again, appearing on the talk show circuit over the weekend. This is some sound. He was all over the place, but this is from ABC's This Week with Christine Amanpour talking about the deficit. I'm going to start with cut number 2. Let's play that.
Remember, what's happening is that there are very loud voices in the Republican Party up there in Congress who have been saying for months that we should force the country to default for the first time in history.
But not the leadership.
No, not the leadership, but a very large member of Congress, large number of members of Congress in both houses have been saying we should default unless the President of the United States agrees to accept deep cuts in benefits for the elderly, for the most vulnerable, in order to make sure we can extend and sustain incredibly generous tax preferences for the top 2% of Americans. And that's not something that's acceptable to the American people, and it's not something we're going to accept.
See, first of all, that's just a lie. Timothy Geithner is lying. Nobody in Congress is saying we should force the government to default. There are people in Congress who are saying let's not raise the debt ceiling, but not raising the debt ceiling and saying I want to default are two different things. See, the congressmen that are saying let's not raise the debt ceiling are saying let's not raise the debt ceiling so that we can cut spending and not default. That's the point. He's making this stuff up. And, of course, no one is saying let's take money from the poor and the elderly to preserve generous tax breaks for the rich. I mean, nobody is saying that. Nobody. He's just making this stuff up. Just because you don't want the debt ceiling to be raised doesn't mean you want a default. It means you want the government to be responsible so that there isn't a default in the future. See, if we keep raising the debt ceiling, default is inevitable. The only question is when. Here, he continues. Let's play cut number 3.
The only way to limit the damage to the American people that would come from Congress failing to act is for Congress to act to raise the debt limit.
But if they don't?
Yeah, but that's the only option available. We do not have the ability
But how's
to
it going to
limit
get
the
done?
damage.
By magic?
No, they're going to pass the debt limit increase. That's what they're going to do. They're going to avoid a default crisis, as they've all said. You know, again, if you listen to them carefully, Speaker Boehner, Senator McConnell have said unequivocally that this country will not default. We will meet our obligations. The problem is they have a vocal, loud, frankly irresponsible minority in their parties who want to take this country to the edge of default, and that is not acceptable.
So again, here you have the Secretary of the Treasury saying we have no options. He's basically saying if we can't borrow more money, we will default, and there is nothing we can do about it. Treasury has no options. I mean, unbelievable. We obviously have options. The government is collecting over $2 trillion a year in revenue, and the cost of servicing the debt right now, of course, is going to explode eventually when interest rates go up. But right now, we're spending less than $300 billion a year on interest. So how can somebody that is taking in $2 trillion not have the money to pay $300 billion? It is just an outright lie. But again, for the Treasury Secretary to say that we have no options, that it's impossible to avoid default, that is what is creating problems in the credit markets. Anyway, here he keeps on going. Let's play cut number 4.
Is there a way to manage chaos if there is a default?
Default would be a tax on all Americans. It would cause irreparable damage to the credit standing of the American economy. It would be devastating to our credibility as a country, and it's not something you can undo. And that's why it's not an acceptable option. And the people who advocate it are deeply irresponsible.
All right. So in other words, default would be devastating, right? It would wreak havoc. It would destroy the economy. Yet, if we don't raise the debt ceiling, he's going to default. Why? Why would he choose to do something that, in his own words, would be devastating? That means it's all a sham. It is all scare tactics in order to get the debt ceiling raised, which is the real threat to the American economy, not the reverse.